Hey everybody, you're listening to the BTW Media Podcast, the show that explores the stories, innovations, and insights for people who love technology and the internet.
Hi everyone, today we are excited to welcome back one of our old friends, Alexander Timokhin, CEO of InterLIR. Having joined us for 2 conversations in the past, Alexander returns at Ripe 90 to offer his latest expert perspective on the shifting IP address market and the digital infrastructure. Welcome back, Alexander. Our first question for you is, with the rapid evolution of IP address management and IPv6 adoption, what are the main challenges you foresee for companies navigating this space, and how is InterLIR addressing them?
Well, first of all, Casey, thank you very much for having me again. I think it's already some sort of tradition. Each Ripe meeting we're talking, so that's great. To answer your question, actually, that depends a lot on the company and on the field. And also one of the most important things here, the location of the company, in which country or in which region they are operating. As far as the IP addresses go, I can tell you that hosting companies and data centers, of course, they have different issues, basically from electricity to the utilization of IP space. But I would say the efficient usage of the IP addresses that they already possess is the most difficult and the most pressing issue, because for instance, in countries like Germany, United States, it's easier for people to acquire new addresses and they don't have to face the scarcity of IP addresses. But in countries that are considered to be ultra high risk areas, for example, Russian Federation, Iran, some people even include China in that list, it's more difficult for the companies to acquire IP space, and that is why they have to be more cautious with the existing space that they possess. For example, I know a data center in Russia, it's a brand new one, and they inherited a lot of IP space from their parent company back in the days, and now they treat the space as a treasure and they don't sell it, and they try to use them and utilize them as careful as they can be. To answer your question, as the InterLIR, we try to help companies to address those issues from proper utilization of the space to acquiring the new IP addresses and additional ones.
Thank you. So given the ongoing scarcity of IPv4 addresses, how do you anticipate the market will respond in terms of pricing, regulation, and the development of secondary markets over the next few years?
Well, that's actually an excellent question, Casey. Thank you so much for asking me. I think the last interview that I had with you was a year ago in Krakow, if I'm not mistaken, because in Prague I was talking to your colleague, Faye. What happened actually surprised me, and this new development is exciting for me. We noticed that a lot of companies finally, like universities or some regional banks that didn't use IP space and they didn't need it, they actually started to sell this space. So they finally realized that IP addresses have value and they can make money on that, and that in turn drove the price even down. And we can see that like prices for /16s, /17s are actually right now, those spaces traded at historical low levels. I think I don't remember that in years. And the funny thing is that you can see that the price for the bigger blocks like /16s, /17s, 18s, it dropped. But the prices for smaller blocks like /20, /21, etc., they actually still remain around 30, 32. And that provides us with a unique opportunity. First of all, it's very cheap right now to acquire big blocks. And at the same time, if you can split those big blocks into the smaller blocks, you can make more money on that. And that is actually great, because now the companies who needed IP addresses can acquire them at comparatively low price. And at the same time, which is interesting, that some companies are finally starting to realize that actually if they split their space, they can make even more money. But the reasoning for that, why it doesn't happen right now so often, is because, like I mentioned, those universities, regional banks, or companies that they were not aware of the IP space, they don't want to deal with it. They want to get just one-time payment and be done with it. But once they realize that that's actually a market and they can make more money on that, that is going to be very exciting for everybody on the market. And that is actually addressing the issue of scarcity, because now we can provide a supply to customers who didn't have enough space, like I said, at comparatively low price. But of course, there's still regulations and stupid sanction lists that I consider just stupid. Sorry to be blunt, but it is. We try to connect people. We try to bring people from all around the world together. And we are basically being sabotaged by stupid regulations that are not justified and they just only serve to isolate people.
So moving on, as digital infrastructure decentralizes with the rising of edge computing, 5G and IoT, how is the demand for IP leasing shifting, and how is the company adapting to support this next wave of network expansion?
That's an interesting question because I can see here that due to the current developments like increasing digitalization, 5G, everything, we can see that more companies demand more space, but they want to use it efficiently as well, which is a key element. And I think that was actually the keystone of the problem that we have right now, because in the past, most of the companies, and including actually registers, they didn't assign the IP space properly, so it was misused, and it was one of the big problems. And now I see that we're more cautious with it, and that's one of the reasons. And I think one of the reasons for that is digitalization, of course. So the demand is growing, which is great. As far as the company policies goes, of course, I can tell you that big companies like telecom companies, in my experience, they still prefer to buy space and actually own it than to lease it because they feel more secured, and I actually can understand them. Given the fact, like I said earlier, that prices for the big blocks dropped, I think honestly it's a great time for them to acquire more IP addresses and just to increase their supply side for the future.
Thank you. So Alexander, thank you once again for sharing your time and insights with us. We look forward to seeing how the company continues to navigate and influence the complex and fast-moving IP address ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
Thanks for joining us for another episode.